In a high conflict divorce, the most powerful tool that you can have is a well thought out, executed parenting plan. Hey guys, I'm Rebecca Green. This is Davey Holt, and we're going to chat with you today about a few fails that we have seen and experienced in other people's parenting plans. So, without further ado, let's jump into two of the biggest parenting plan fails that we've seen and how to avoid them.
The first one is decision making about all the kids' things, and really covering decision making in your parenting plan is one of the highest conflict opportunities in the whole plan. It also is one of the ways to architect the whole rest of the plan to fall down. And what it comes down to with decision making is when there's a kid question, a child question, do we have to agree or not, right?
Is it an individual decision or a joint decision? And what I think a lot of people assume, because you say it at the beginning of a marriage before things get crazy, is we'll make the best decision for the kids. We can hate each other, but we both love the kid and we'll both agree. That's going to go right out the window, at least at some point in the parenting plan. And something I think that your attorney told you really early on is, look, this parenting plan is not for when things are going well. What you're doing, especially in a high conflict divorce, is you are trying to put yourself in a future version of your life where your significant other, your ex, gets maybe somebody else. They have a new boo thing, and that person is really causing a lot of trouble. They don't like you. It gets really high conflict. You need to have a document to go back to, keeping the children in mind about how you're going to make decisions. And so that's what this is.
Okay, we're not going to agree. The other divergence that's happening too as you divorce is that your parenting strategies are evolving. And talk more about other types of, I'm thinking of health, I'm thinking of fitness, of screen time, stuff like that. And then how do you try to resolve those things? You have to do it through having this language in your parenting plan, because it's the playbook, it's the contract, business agreements, leases, mortgages, houses. When you can't agree, you have to resort to the paperwork. Now, you hope that you can find ways to work it out and not have to revert to it, but it's the backbone that guides everything else, which is decision making.
And one of the things that we say whenever we're helping people is, really, at the end of the day, this document that you're drafting with your ex is a business agreement. And when you look at it under those lights, it's, yeah, there's some really specific weird things that have to be brought up. But if you are in the middle of a high conflict divorce, these are really important things to stick to. And decision making on how you're going to make decisions with somebody that you really don't like, who doesn't really like you obviously don't agree. So let's talk about a few of the things that go into decision making, and even what that verbiage might look like in a divorce document.
The other pro tip to remember too is, I think sometimes people enter into these parenting agreements and use them like they are some indelible code. And the really unfortunate reality that I want people to understand is, this is about one of the last times that you can spend money on attorneys to agree on something. And if there's a violation of the parenting plan, the sad news is that your only real recourse, because it is a business agreement, is to resue them and to take them back to court. And so you don't want to do that. That's expensive, that's time consuming, that's costly, that's emotionally draining. Get it all down, but then know in the back of your mind, what if? What if the things, even when we agreed, still don't get agreed to? What are my options? It's taking them back to court and remodifying it. And that's the thing that I think a good attorney doesn't want you to do, is have to come back to court and remodify it again. So you don't have to. You tried to be diligent and you missed a big gap. You can either work that out or go back and remodify it. So I think that's another consideration too, is that, okay, we're going to invest all this energy, things we miss or we don't get right here, the only way to get them back in is through the court system.
And we share quite a bit, I think, probably of things we missed that we wish we would have done differently. It's where a lot of these fails are coming from, is you do the best you can with the best attorney you can. And if you've got a high conflict ex, they're going to find ways to poke holes in it, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Let's jump into joint decisions versus individual decisions. What's a fail there?
I would say a fail that we see a lot, and not just our own experience, is medical decisions. Not only what dentist to choose or what doctor to choose, but also what medicine to give the children. That's a big issue. I think you start to have divergence in medical philosophies and spiritual philosophies, things like that. And people are going to say, hey, that medicine that we used to just fight about when we were in the house together, whether the kids are going to take it, now I'm actually going to take a stand and say, I don't want that medicine in their body for whatever reason that is, because if you don't anticipate that medical decisions are going to be something you're going to have to talk about in your parenting plan, they're just going to come up and it's going to be a bunch of chaos and you're going to fight over these things. So I think medical decisions, doctor's visits, that has to be joint decisions or not. And then what kind of communication happens around the medical information, right? Medical, dental, therapy. Therapy's a big one, right?
Kansas residents, one parent can take their kid to therapy. In Missouri, both legal guardians have to sign a document allowing the kids to be in therapy. So if one parent's like anti-mental health, anti-therapy, thinks you're trying to leverage a therapy experience for the kids, they can be like, my kid's not going to therapy. And as long as you live in Missouri, your kid's not going to therapy. So that's a joint decision that needs to be in the parenting plan. And what we've recommended based on a lot of our situations is just put it in there. The children are allowed to go to therapy. Both parents agree.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to say, right? Is to say that, again, it's a contract, and contracts have to be sued to be enforced sometimes. But if you get it in the beginning, and people that work with us, we try to be comprehensive about these things. And if you got your attorney, we don't stand in the way of the attorney.
Oh, we love the attorneys.
Supplement what they do, but the attorneys have multiple cases. I think the point is you might have to stipulate in the parenting plan, we believe in therapy. We believe in sunscreen. We believe in nutrition and exercise and things like that. If you can get the agreements in there now, get them in there now so you don't have to fight about it later. Medical, next one that's a joint decision making that carries a lot of extra context is extracurriculars. Extracurricular activities, sporting events, where they are, practices, transportation. Talk more about some of the things that people need to consider when those extracurriculars are being decided on, and then planning schedules and practices and things like that.
Yeah, so this is one that I think typically in a marriage, it seems like one parent's a sports parent and one parent isn't, or one parent wants their kids to play baseball, the other one encourages football. It's one of those things that gets weird once you split, especially because a lot of times the sporting teams that your kids were on maybe watched the divorce happen. So now you were married last season, you're not married, the parents are going to take a side. It can get really weird. So having very specific verbiage in your divorce decree about are sports a joint decision or an individual decision is important. And I'll give a personal example here. So my son plays competitive soccer. It says in my personal divorce decree, both parents have to agree for competitive sports. The reason is that's a big commitment. It's practice twice a week. It's every weekend. It's year round. If my son plays sports and I'm not a part of it, that sucks. I want to know what league he's in. I want to know when the games are. To me, that's a joint decision. And we always try to put it through the lens of what the kid would want. Would the kid want both parents to know about a competitive sport? Absolutely. You want both grandparents on the sidelines. That's what you want for the kid. And so that's the way that mine is set up. On the other side, things that aren't competitive, let's say my daughter's doing some in-home gymnastics lessons. I've scheduled it specifically on my night of the week whenever I have her. Dad doesn't have to worry about that. And yet the right thing to do is to notify, hey, we're going to do gymnastics. If there's ever a little tumbling display that the teacher chooses to show, great. So that's some of the things to think about, joint decisions versus individual decisions.
I think extracurricular too, the risk as well is things like transportation to games and practices. Who's going to be the main liaison or the parent contact, or what if step parents start to come into the fold? Are they allowed to? These are all things you need to think of. How are the kids going to get to practice? How are they going to get picked up? We know of situations where even though there's 50-50 parenting time, and in theory, that one parent's responsibility is to get them to practice, that person's ex still plays a part, even not on their parenting nights.
Absolutely.
Because there's multiple children. So I don't know if that's something you can always project for, but it's something to comprehensively look at. How are the kids going to get there? What happens if a parent is traveling? Can the other person step in and travel and take, or does that person need to find a babysitter? There's so many questions that you have to get right, because the biggest failure, if you don't get this right, what's going to bleed through is messaging through the kids. And the kids are going to be caught in the middle and worried about their stuff on logistics, and it comes through these extracurriculars, is who's going to be responsible for buying the equipment and housing the equipment? And are we going to get two sets of equipment?
In high conflict divorces, it is best to follow what they call parallel parenting, where each house functions as their own home, meaning there's 2 soccer balls, there's a ball at each house, there's a backpack at each house, there's lunch boxes at each house. What it does is just gets rid of all of the extra communication that you might have to have with someone who creates chaos in your life. It's protection for you, it's protection for the kid. And a lot of times, finances and divorces, especially at the beginning, are really hard. And so I hear that. What that means is you need to be really careful about the situations that you choose to put your kids in. Maybe you become a one sport family because having two sets of two sports and things on every night is difficult, and that's hard, and a lot of people don't want to hear it. But I think the most important thing is to make sure it's a joint decision with a sporting event if you're both going to be involved in the event itself.
In those high conflict situations, which you don't want that, but it happens, you might need to spell out who's allowed to sit where at what game. Let's be honest, right?
That can't go in the parenting plan, though.
Some of the times it might be the situation where you have to alternate games. You have to alternate practices. There's a lot of parents that want to attend practices. One of my greatest memories of my mother and what she did, my mom went to a lot of my practices. And she doesn't always realize how much I appreciated that. That's something that's going to be tough if you have that commitment with your children to go to your son's practice on another night. And you might need to stipulate that. Or, for example, like you're saying, maybe there was some abuse, maybe there was some manipulation, maybe there was some bad stuff that happened. In some of these situations, you want to go to one kid's practice or the other, there's just some bad stuff or some manipulation that you got to take into account.
Yeah, and unfortunately we see it a lot. And what people always say is it's going to get better. With time, it's going to get better. And I hear that. I think that personal safety, emotional safety, physical safety always has to be top priority for everybody involved. And that's not just the parents. What we see a lot of times with people who are divorcing is that they've put the kids first for so long, they themselves are now in a bad situation. So the parenting plan is for the kids, but it's also for you. You are the parent. What's more important than your kid playing on a football team is you being in a safe place emotionally where you are well regulated and able to parent in a healthy way. Anything to add to that?
No, when you talk about these parenting fails, you have a lot of regret during the process of divorce or after. If you don't get these things right in your parenting plan and you have some of these parenting fails, long story short, it's painful and expensive to fix. The best thing you can do is operate from a position of no trust whatsoever of your soon-to-be ex. Do not trust anything about what they are saying.
If it's a high conflict divorce, you've got to just outline it.
You have to be exhaustive. And listen, that's going to be tough because every time you put something down that you want that could be a parenting fail as a trap, your ex is going to get mad.
We don't actually have to outline practice. And you're like, this is the best thing that I think anybody ever told us is to just propose to your ex. We are in the business of raising our kids together. And if we had a business plan, we would have to decide what pieces. Are we bringing sports? Are we doing braces? Are we giving them Zyrtec or are we giving them Claritin? Is it chewable? And that can't go in the parenting plan, but what can go is how you're going to make the decisions. Is there a board of directors? Most likely, yes, there's a board of directors for the joint decisions, and it's the two of you.
One, in that board of directors comment, in a high conflict divorce, if you can't agree on a therapist, the parenting plan might say, we're going to let the lawyers decide or the therapist decide, or high conflict co-parent counselor. If you don't have someone to decide, a referral from one doctor to another, is that a joint decision between the parents or do we trust the medical professionals? Do you have to get 5 choices and make a decision together? These are the logistics. These are the fights. These are the fails that come up. And if you don't get comprehensive in negotiating a parenting plan, you're going to have some parenting fails.